What is up, everyone? What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into the Writers' Room. It is another Sunday night. It is another edition of the Writers' Room. And look at this. We got a new face. We got someone new to join the panel tonight. It's Iestyn Harris. He's been our BF historian as in the Writers' Room. And glad to have you, Iestyn. It's been too long. And it's funny because you've told us that it took going on vacation to actually be free for a Sunday night, but happy to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I've got a nice thing of blue. I'm wearing my Zubaz. All my bases are well and truly covered. The only thing I didn't have checked off on my list for this vacation was spending some time talking about the Bills. So here we are.
There you go. Now we can check that box for you. Tried and true. Alec, how you doing? I know you're back in rolling for another Sunday evening. How you doing?
Oh, it's always great to be here. Love to be here.
Love to hear it. And Doc, you missed a week. You said you missed us pre-show. You sure about that? Did you miss us?
Yeah, just doing some parenting time. But hey, the weather's really turned around lately. I got out on my rollerblades yesterday. It was awesome. I got my matching fanny pack now and my mesh tank top. So if you guys live in the New York City metro area, you might catch me up in Rockland County doing laps around the lake.
I'll keep my eyes peeled when I go to the Northeast. Look for the guy in the mesh shirt. It's too funny. All right. I know, right? That's what I was thinking. All right, so we'll hop right into it with our first article. We're going to go through the list of articles that's happened recently for each one of us. But we'll start with you, Alec. And the first one is really your fandom for Antonio Williams. And I'll give you the floor, but we definitely talked about it a little bit last week when we talked about camp battles and, the battle that's going to take place for those backup running back spots. Obviously, we know Singletary and Moss are pretty much locked into this thing. So why do you think that Antonio Williams is going to make the final roster? And I'll link your article here in the chat. So if you guys want to check it out further, more than Alec's opinions right here, you get to see that in the chat. So yeah, Alec, take it away.
So in my research, I learned a little bit more about Antonio Williams. I learned in his time at UNC, he also played on special teams and won an award for playing on special teams there. So he does have experience there. And he also returned a couple of kicks while he was there. So he is very versatile in not only running the ball on offense, but also playing on special teams. And that's what makes you on the roster on this team, is being versatile and being able to play multiple positions at the same time. So I believe that alone puts him over Taiwan Jones, even though Taiwan Jones is probably one of the best special teams players on our team. But with Antonio Williams being able to produce on both offense and on special teams, I think that puts him over the hill a little bit more.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because I think he was a decently high recruit, and then he just kind of went into a committee kind of role once he transferred from Ohio State to University of North Carolina rather. But yeah, he really showed well in that Week 17 game, and obviously a lot of fans have taken well to that. Iestyn, do you think he's going to make the final roster, or do you think someone like Taiwan Jones is, just too good at special teams to cut from this team, or, the recent signing of Matt Breida is just too much on offense to neglect and really ignore to keep someone like Antonio Williams? Where do you stand on Antonio Williams?
I like Antonio Williams, but it's hard to discern whether or not I like him because he's an underdog, and we've been underdogs for so long. I kind of relate to that.
Right.
But the fact that we're not really talking about him making this due to his running back talent and what he brings to the table as a running back as opposed to a special teamer is a bit of an indicator. He's perfectly capable. As he tore up an apt defense in Miami during the limited time on the field he got. But it's choosing between, at this point, the evil you know and the evil you don't. And every time people will pick the evil they know, they're much more familiar with Taiwan Jones. If it comes down to special teams being a factor, I think he takes the second fiddle. But I don't see him taking over either Singletary, Moss, or Breida as in taking real running back snacks. If they can hide him on the practice squad, I absolutely believe they'll do that. But considering the fact that he was a relatively high recruit before he came in, before he moved to a committee, And the fact that he did do such severe damage to a desperate Dolphins team that was one of the better defenses in the NFL, I think that he might not make it through waivers.
Yeah.
Given the chance. So as much as I love him, I highly doubt that he's still on this roster come season. I mean, with this, we're not a team holding prospects to win in next year or the year after. This is our Super Bowl window, and we need to make the hard decisions right now and take the guys who we know can bring it, and the veterans who we know can do exactly what's asked of them on game day and playoffs, Super Bowl even.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. And it's funny you say like the evil you know and the evil you don't, because this time of year it really comes around to, like you said, you're going to stick with the guys you know are going to contribute for you. But throughout the off season, everyone wants that shiny new toy, the one that we don't know, that unknown, that potential, that untapped potential. Doc, are you falling for the untapped potential, or do you really believe that Antonio Williams can make this squad?
I don't think he has the inside track to make the team, but I do love his talent, and I would like to see him around. I take him over Breida, to be honest, because I just feel like I don't know. I feel like Breida's kind of a one trick pony kind of deal, like a speed guy. Antonio can get more of a combo. The problem is it's the special team. So if they're going to keep a third, fourth running back on the squad, you're going to have to be able to play special teams. I mean, he could edge out Breida, make the roster on the 53, but just like not be active on game day quite a bit.
Right.
Still have Taiwan as the fourth guy. So it's possible. But you know who he kind of reminds me of is like Gillislee. Remember when we had Gillislee?
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, it's kind of like an unknown, like outside looking in. But like once he get his number was called, he was great. So we'll see how it plays out. But I'd definitely be rooting for him. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think we're all definitely rooting for him. That's actually a really good comparison though, the Mike Gillislee one. He runs really in a similar way where he's doing everything he can to pick up all the yards that are available. Just running hard, always falling forward. That seems to be his play style. I'm excited to see really what happens at that tail end of the running back group. I've kind of soured on Breida. It's kind of funny. I feel like we're all in a gray area with Breida because he was so good in San Francisco, and then he's just kind of like bounced around and it's been inconsistent, and then whatever the hell happened last year in Miami. So it's all very interesting when it comes to what we're gonna do with Breida, because immediately after the signing, I think everyone was pretty excited about the fact that we got some speed in the running back room, and now it's just kind of like, what about Antonio Williams? You guys forget about that game? So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens during training camp, but
definitely a good camp battle.
Yeah, definitely one of the good camp battles for sure. So we'll move on here, and Iestyn, I want to give you the mic, man, because you've been, like I said earlier, the historian. Like, you've been going through the Wall of Fame, and you've been doing your homework on a bunch of these historic Buffalo Bills, and it's really more than just the Buffalo Bills itself, because it digs into the history of the NFL. So I'll plug your most recent Wall of Fame article, or at least one of your more recent Wall of Fame articles. But I want you to just talk about the series in general and just how excited you are about it and maybe things to come.
Right. So as I'm sure you're all aware, we've got one hell of a lot of names up on the Wall of Fame. It's actually 31 if you count the 12th man as a name. But for the sakes of my series, it does count, and we will be touching on that. But I've been reviewing every single name that decorates our hallowed halls and hallowed walls, starting largely with a bunch of historic guys. I've been covering a lot of the AFL Buffalo Bills from the 1960 to 1970, where the AFL-NFL merger happened, and we got the league we know today. But we've been hitting a lot of big names and a lot of medium names on the way. We've hit some phenomenal players like Billy Shaw, who is the only player in the entirety of the NFL Hall of Fame not actually have played an NFL snap. Played his whole career in the AFL, and he's the only one to have ever done it. We hit on Patrick J. Magrota, exactly right. We hit on Patrick J. Magrota, who was just a guy. He was an everyday guy like one of us. He happened to be, he owned a relatively successful business in the Buffalo area, and he always felt that Buffalo was a perfect football city. And so when he given the opportunity, he helped bring football to Buffalo as we know it today. But you have to read about it if you want to know more.
No, for sure.
We've gone over Jack Kemp. the first franchise quarterback this city ever knew. We've hit Tom Sestak and Albert Dubenian, guys whose style of play led to the success of the AFL as we know it. I mean, the NFL might never, the AFL might have failed if it wasn't for these guys bringing the kind of play that they brought to the game. Our most recent one, we touched on Booker Edgerson. It was an early lockdown cornerback in an era where the wide receiver one became a real significant threat. It wasn't about running and having them out there to, occasionally catch a little flip. With the intervention of the long bomb, no position became saw a bigger jump in importance than his, and he really brought the game as we know it to life. But the one I'd really love to talk about is my man Mike Stratton. You may have heard about the shot heard around the world, but this man's famous for the hit heard around the world. It wasn't until the 1964 championship game when he eliminated the San Diego Chargers running back to essentially hand us victory. They were heavily based around their run game. They had mild passing success. But his intervention and his constant physical play, which wrecked his body throughout his career, mind you, he put it all on the line for us. And he brought the first championship to Buffalo. Without his single hit, the Bills would not have won that match. No way to say whether or not they would have made it any further the next years after that. But the first championship Buffalo ever saw for football, credit it all to him. We've hit a lot of great players throughout the course of this series, and over the course of the next year, I aim to finish the wall in its entirety, along with some other pieces. I'm going to be talking about players who do deserve to be on the wall who aren't yet.
Nice.
I'm going to be talking about all of the big names. Sometime next month, you can expect the O.J. Simpson article, and believe me, it will be both a praise for his on-field capabilities and potentially a scathing indictment. I'll let you know more about that later. But it's an exciting time, and we're going to be hitting all of the 90s Buffalo Bills. They're all yet to come, so plenty more in store if you want to check out the series. But 31 names and at least 31 articles coming your way.
I am now curious. You don't have to spoil any, but we'll go around the room. But I am now so curious who you think deserves to be on the Wall of Fame.
Oh, well, I have a particular bias towards Fred Jackson.
Oh, I know. I'm so happy you said that.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I see. I wasn't always a Bills fan. It wasn't until I moved to North America, the continent, that I really got into the NFL. But my father had been a Bills fan since the early 80s for some godforsaken reason. And he brought me to my first Bills game in the Toronto series, which I'm not sure all of you remember fondly, but for me, those were great matches.
No. Yeah.
And in the first game I ever saw, it was we were hosting the Washington Redacteds, and they were not necessarily a great team, neither were we, but we shut them out. Fred Jackson ran all over the pitch. He got I racked, I think, like 150 plus yards stolen in the game. He was everywhere. He was.
I think that got Fitzpatrick his contract extension.
It honestly might have. I vaguely remember that, him riding those coattails.
Yeah, it was a long. It feels like a long time ago for me, because that was the beginning of my really of my NFL fandom. But I mean, he did so much for the team. He was this brilliant heart and soul, and I'll never forget the way he left. He goes out in the press conference. He says, Rex Ryan's our coach, and this year it's championship or bust. And then 2 days later, he's not on the roster anymore.
Yeah,
and that always stung. But I always felt like he deserved the credit for a lot of what he did during those early years. And there are a lot of other names who absolutely deserve the credit as well. And don't worry, I'm not forgetting about them. But he's just particularly close to my heart.
Yeah, no, that's so fair. Like I said, I'm so glad you say that one. I feel like I've said that one before, and I've been put on blast for it. But I feel like there's like an emotional sentiment to that. It's not all about what they did on the field. It's as much as like they meant to the community and the team itself, especially during the drought years. It's hard to find anyone worthy. But now I'm curious. So Alec, Doc, do you guys have anyone besides obviously Fred Jackson? That's
Kyle Williams.
Who is that?
Kyle Williams.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. That's definitely the other one too. Yeah. Long tendered Bill, drought years, really put everything he could into the team. Yeah, that's another good one. Where do you guys stand? I imagine your answer is going to be no, but where do you guys stand on Stevie Johnson?
I loved Stevie, but it was a lot of what he did was either in the early days of me being a fan or before my time at all. It's so I don't have that same emotional attachment. And looking back at his career objectively, I don't think he quite hits the same mark as a lot of these other guys for their careers.
Right.
Because it is a lot of what they did for Buffalo, and it's difficult to say that these guys did a lot and they were incredible if they didn't make the playoffs. Obviously, the same goes for Fred Jackson, but he did a little bit longer, a little bit more prolific.
Right.
And there's a lot of great names like that on that same caliber out there, and I just don't think he hits the mark.
Yeah, that's fair. Doc, you got any lingering ones?
I think I would love to have Stevie on there, but I don't think his tenure was long enough, nor was the success there. Hey, is Reuben Brown on the wall?
Reuben Brown is not on the wall.
Because I think that's a good debatable one. He's got he had like 8 Pro Bowls in Buffalo.
I think he was good. I'm looking that up now.
He was good, like all pro good. But I don't know, it's always tough with those linemen, you know what I mean? Because they're kind of it's tough to gauge
into the wall since 2017. That was the last time we had a name go up there, and it was Cookie Gilchrist. But I think that at this point, I would imagine they'll get another name up this season, partially because of the break. But I mean, we're seeing massive team success, and they're going to want to pay homage to some of these guys who helped us become the team we are now. And it's been 4 years since the last name went up. Before that, it was 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, 1 year.
Okay, so we're overdue.
There should have been. Hell, they could put up 2 names this year. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
That'd be cool.
I would.
That'd be nice.
I believe there are certain terms you have to meet. I think you got to be retired as a player. You have to be retired for a certain period of time before you can be honored like that. A lot of these, they didn't even have a Wall of Fame until O.J. Simpson started it in 1980. So a lot of these guys might not get the recognition until it's much too late, but don't be surprised if they put 2 names up on the wall this year.
That'd be awesome. That would be super cool. Yeah, curious what that threshold is for retired years, because maybe they're just waiting out Kyle Williams' threshold, and then they're just going to toss him up there.
I'd need to check. If there is one, I believe it was 2 years, so it could be this year.
Already eligible. Wow. All right, so we'll move on from the Wall of Fame itself, and another article I loved from you, Iestyn. It was about Josh Allen and his rookie season, and it was an article, but it was almost equally like a videography. It was like you made a little compilation for every single game throughout the 2018 year, and it's impressive. You picked out good plays, great plays, and some plays that were like missed opportunities, but also weren't even his fault because the team was obviously just kind of hot garbage in 2018. But I'll let you talk about that journey, and then we can all talk about the Josh Allen 2018 season together. And I'll drop the article in the chat.
See, I always felt that Josh Allen never got enough credit. I'm sure a lot of us are aware. He was being attacked relentlessly from the second he declared for the draft all the way up until today. He's still being attacked, really. But it's been a long road to get where we are, and Josh Allen put up a lot of good stuff when he was that young, hot-headed hero ball kid that he probably still is, quite frankly. The idea for the article was essentially I wanted to point out to all of the people who consistently said Josh Allen's garbage, he doesn't do anything good, he's inaccurate, he can't hit the ball into tight windows, he can't accurately throw on the run, he can't, he keeps fleeing in the pocket when there's no pressure, and some of this stuff was true. Obviously the stats are all there, you all have seen them 1,000 times, but I wanted to point out that he's always really been the quarterback he is today. He just needs to do these same things consistently. He knows how to hit the deep ball. He knows how to stay in the pocket and, manipulate it a little bit, shift your feet a little bit, duck a shoulder, pump fake. He mastered the arts of this, but it's hard to manipulate a pocket when you have no pocket. It's hard to hit a man in stride on the run when he doesn't catch it anyway. None of this stuff gets seen. So you may notice, the videos some of them are a little bit generous There's some. You may notice some incompletions thrown in there, but there's nothing you can do with it. So when you hit man in stride, then hope he catches it. But the idea was I wanted to essentially dunk on people. I felt like we all deserved the opportunity to look back and say, that's right, we weren't crazy. He was good. You just didn't see it. You weren't paying attention. And that's been my philosophy for a long time, is that Josh Allen gave us hope, and he gave us this reason to believe he could be the franchise quarterback we've been dreaming of. And he gave us all of these reasons, but other people would just make fun of it because they weren't watching. They didn't see. They didn't care, and it was fun to irritate us. But here we are today. Allen's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I could say undisputedly, but people still find reasons to poke holes in that. But let him be miserable. We won this one, and if you feel like going back and revisiting those old arguments and living through a bit of history you may not like, but you will absolutely love to look at, check out my article.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good time going down memory lane. And now the question I have for you guys, Doc, I'll start with you. I feel like most of us probably bought into Josh Allen like probably 5 minutes after it wasn't Josh Rosen, and we were like, oh, okay, cool, like we're with it, like it's Josh Allen, let's get our heads wrapped around it, and that's that. I think we all probably bought in. But Doc, at what point, or maybe in which game, were you like totally bought into the idea that he's actually going to be the franchise quarterback that we have been expecting for years? Like, when did it really click for you that you felt he was adequate and competent enough to be that franchise quarterback?
Good question. So early as his preseason and his rookie year, I mean, there was some real highlights. The Cleveland one, he like fit in there to Streeter.
Yep.
And then what came first, the Carolina game or the Cleveland game?
I think it was Carolina, right?
Yep.
It was Carolina. I mean, the one that he struck in there in the front corner of the end zone at the end of the game, that was like, holy shit. And then he had the Cleveland one. I was like, damn. So honestly, it was a rocky road. I loved him. I was behind him 100%. But to know that he was the franchise quarterback, he really had to like pick it up a notch. So even in his second year, we got to the playoffs and all that, he still, it was too up and down, and he actually never like had like the really high ceiling games. Like we saw the talent, but it wasn't consistent, and like the stats just really weren't there, and you just know that you can't really kind of ride that coattail to a championship. So did I fall in love with him when he was a rookie? 100%. Was I rooting for him? Yeah, but to know that he was the franchise quarterback, it really took this past season. And someone tell me what games we had. Who was the opener? Those Jets?
Yeah.
Jets didn't do it for me. We had the Dolphins game 2, right?
Yep.
I believe. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, damn, the Dolphins, like, but he always tears up the Dolphins. I think it was
but that was a big game. That was 415 and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, that was
100%. Then I was like, oh, damn, he's got the stats. But then when he did it again week 3, I was
against the Rams,
I was like, he's done it. And we almost blew it, but
that was on him.
Yeah,
he did it. He completed the comeback. That was totally on him. And that's actually the funny thing too. Even when he wasn't putting up the stats, for me, there wasn't a particular game, but like the amount of comebacks that he managed to put together, especially when he didn't have great stats or great teams, but he would just will his team to victory with, just a timely game-winning drive. Like, that's probably what led me to believe this dude is going to improve enough. But yeah, you're actually probably right, Doc. I don't think I was actually totally comfortable with him and bought in to the idea that he's like, yep, bona fide, this is our franchise quarterback moving forward until this year, like some point middle of the season this year. I definitely had my doubts after like the Titans game and the Chiefs game. I was like, oh my God, like, really, are we going to go through this ebbs and flow thing all over again with you? Like, just show us some consistency. But obviously by like middle of the year, it was obvious, like, bad games happen. Tom Brady has bad games, everyone has bad games. But yeah, he really found some level of consistency through this 2020 season. Like you talked about, Iestyn, that was really like we saw in those rookie season games, like we saw potential. We saw a lot of rawness. He had that mobility, arm strength, the will to win, all that stuff, but he couldn't really put it together consistently. And we saw that in 2020. So now I'll turn it to you, Alec. Was there a specific game for you in the rookie season where you were like totally bought in, or, you know, if thinking back at it retrospectively, was it this 2020 season that really solidified that feeling for you?
For me, it was actually year 2, and watching him develop what he did from year 1 to year 2, and
Fair.
seeing all the times he came through at the end of the game and brought us and kept us in games by himself. Well, with help the defense, obviously, but he was keeping us in games with not the best team, and as being a young quarterback and just bringing us down the field, willing us to games, like you said. I think year 2 was when I realized that he could be our franchise quarterback, and then year 3 solidified it for me.
Yeah, obviously year 3 was insane, but that speaks to the point about Josh Allen that I think we all love. As much as he's just like this athletic freak, like generational talent at the offensive or at the quarterback position, what you brought up, really his improvement from year 1 to year 2, and then obviously you look at it now, year 2 to year 3. If he's just going to keep doing that, like, I don't really care about the stats. Exactly. If he's going to get better, like tangibly just as a quarterback, not necessarily on the stat sheet, right, I don't really care. Like, I am totally bought into this dude because he's just going to improve, and he's going to do everything he can to improve. And he's just so aware of the areas that he needs to improve. And that was one of the things I believe most of the media understood about him, even in his rookie season. And there's obviously that clip about LaShawn McCoy, like ranting and raving about how smart he is just walking into the building his rookie season. So obviously in retrospect, it's a lot easier to look back at this and be like, oh, okay, yeah, like this guy was the dude from the minute he walked onto, you know, One Bills Drive. But, right, you know, not everyone knows that at the moment. You know, it takes a lot of things falling in the right way for certain things to work out and be successful in that way. But yeah, what's up?
Yeah, not to be understated, because I think we all noticed, but then, you know, we kind of forgot about it. Entering his 3rd year, didn't Allen get a lot thicker?
I think he did. I actually think he did, because I went back and watched your stuff, Iestyn, and I looked at it and I was like, he's just like not really moving the same as he does now. Like, he's just so much more efficient with his movements. Yeah. He really filled into his body this past year, for sure, 100%. And obviously that's right up your alley, Doc. I guess that's a good segue, you know, getting into the male form and peak physical form.
Yeah, that's my expertise.
That's your niche. No, but that's a perfect segue though to your article. It really is. And you did a great job. I want you to talk about it and really give it the praise it deserves, because I'm not going to do it justice. But really what you did is you tied the 2020 injuries that happened, and you brought them up in a themed way for how they project into the 2021 season. So I'll let you speak on it, and I'll throw it in the chat.
Yeah, so I don't know if you went back to the 2021 draft class. I think I did that and paralleled them to Jersey Shore characters too, about like who's the safe one and who's more of a wild card being drafted. So listen, I could type up stuff about injuries all day, but I just want to make it more interesting when I'm doing it. So for the Bills Mafia, I thought, why don't we do like a Mafia organizational chart with, like, you know, the Don, the boss, being like the, you know, the most injury risk guy coming into the season, and then you got the underboss, then the captains, the soldiers, and the associates. So I'll just kind of go through it. So at the top of the list, I think I'd be most concerned with Matt Milano. Why? Because he's so important. All right, we lost one game with him, but it was the last game, the Chiefs game. So, you know, I don't have advanced statistics to say why, but obviously, you know, when a guy's won every game that he was with you, I mean, he's obviously very important to the defense. You can see the difference when he's out there. He's flying around. He makes it easier for Tremaine. We all been through that for the past few months looking at that. So the problem with him is he has a lot of soft tissue injuries. So to have a pec tear, rarely do you tear your pec and it doesn't need surgery. It's a huge tendon. When it rips, I mean, this is like a prime mover. It's so strong. It's important for tackling, getting off blocks, all that type of stuff. So when he tore his pec, I was like, damn, this is going to be surgery. But then he came back in like 2 weeks. Yeah. But you could see that he was in a brace, so it was limiting getting pulled back. and then they had to shut him back down for like another month and a half. So the problem is if he didn't get surgery, then it probably was like a grade 2 strain. So there's grades 1, 2, 3. One's little, 2's like, 2's like a big chunk taken out, and then 3, it's kind of ripped off the bone. So if you guys don't know what muscles look like, pretend the fibers are like a Twizzler. You know, the ones that are all wrapped around. You guys know what Twizzlers are, right?
Oh, for sure.
So so just take like a fish hook and just pull out a bunch. So a bunch of strings pop out. So you can imagine if you have less strings, you have less strength. Now, he's young. He's 26, going on 27. Pumped up kid. You're probably not going to see it on film, right? And it doesn't mean the pec one's going to kind of reoccur, but he's going to have some decreased strength in that area on that arm. And he might see it when because I saw it when he came back early. Say a guy's coming through the hole and he wants to like jump out and get him with one arm. He was hesitant. He pulled that back. And when, he starts to realize that, the strength's not there, we might see that happen. And all it takes is that being the play that changed the game where, all the focus goes on and they're like, oh man, that's his pec. But, in the regular flow of the game, if it was like a 3-yard gain, we wouldn't really be talking about it, right? Yeah. So So the pec one, I'm not too worried about the pec, but I'm just thinking that it's going to be a little weak. The big one is the hamstrings, right? Yep. So the hamstrings always reoccur. So he had it early in his career, and he's had it again this year. He missed a game for the hamstring this year. So when a guy's super important, he's had a lot of soft tissue injuries, I would say that's a high concern for reoccurring. A parallel you can make to another player is like, Deshaun Jackson. How often does Deshaun Jackson come in, look good early in the year, and then he's missing games for his hamstring for the rest of the year? I mean, it's like clockwork. Yeah. So that's my little spiel on Milano. So for
before we get to your underboss, I really want to ask everyone else, because you're absolutely right about this like trend with his soft tissues, especially the hamstring, because you're right, it's totally reoccurring. Do you guys think Matt Milano is injury prone? Because I see that getting thrown around out there, and I don't know if it's necessarily true as much as it is just like, he's got this hamstring thing, like that soft tissue trend where he's just like constantly getting some sort of strain on those muscles at some point during every year. I think we didn't see it much, if I'm not mistaken, his rookie year, but he also didn't get a whole lot of snaps his rookie year until the latter half of the season. So I'm just kind of curious. Yeah, at the beginning?
The hamstring, yeah.
Yeah, well,
the hamstring.
The low snap count, then the low snap count for sure.
So, look, just like from a PT perspective and medical, fractures happen. I mean, freak occurrences. A guy rolls up on you, you get hit the wrong way with high velocity. That's all it takes. Concussion, same thing. However, actually, once you get a couple concussions, then you're actually more likely to get them. The soft tissue stuff that's when you can pigeon these guys as injury prone. That happens once, happens twice. But when you start seeing it happen over a 4-year trend, I mean, I'd definitely be worried. And honestly, that might be a reason why he didn't cash in on the open market. We knew what injuries he was working with, and his agent knew, and, other people out there kind of might have known, hey, this is a soft tissue injury guy. I don't want to really pour a ton of money in there. So sometimes that kind of plays with the contract stuff. But luckily, the team was comfortable enough to keep him on board. So I would say, let's roll with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think he's like damaged goods or anything, guys. Don't get that impression. But I could see like this kind of stuff like cropping up. You know what I mean? And it's like any given Sunday, all right, he's out for 2 weeks. He kind of tweaks something again.
Yeah.
Not going to say that he's pumped up, but think about it. He's like a safety from college, and now he's a lot bigger playing linebacker. So kind of do the math there. Sometimes the body's not kind of set up for that. So there's a lot of times that's when these things kind of break down.
Anyone else got any other thoughts on Matt Milano before we move on to Doc's underboss?
I think that perhaps he is injury prone in a way. I mean, he does. You're right. He has recurring soft tissue injuries, and that is sort of where you tend to see repetition and progression. So that missing longer periods of time each time as you do more and more damage in the same area. But he's not missed much time for a lot of these injuries. I mean, last year was the only time we'd really missed any real stretch of time, and you're pretty much guaranteed to have to take more time for injuries as you age and as you wear on your body some more. But he did sign for what, $12 to $15 million under market value. I mean, he was
over the 3 or 4 years that he signed. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, he's evidently it was a factor. I mean, I think part of it you can accredit to the fact that we're a championship contender. He knows he fits. He has a significant role in the offense, and he wants to come back, so he's willing to take a pay cut to make that team succeed. But simultaneously, if the repetitive injuries was a factor in that contract decision, then it's clearly a significant enough worry for the team that they're going to do their best to work through that particular issue. It's clearly a focus for them. Because he's by far the best pass coverage linebacker on our team. He's the only guy who can consistently cover top tight ends, and even then, it's those guys are impossible to cover regularly. But he brings a unique talent, and the fact that they didn't invest that much money in him means they probably do think it's a factor. So I would say, yeah, he's probably injury prone, but they'll know how to avoid it, and they'll do their best to keep him on the field regardless, and in as close to full working order as he can be.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. Alec, got any last thoughts on Matt Milano before we move on to Doc's underboss?
I mean, I completely agree with what Iestyn just said. I would say he quite possibly is injury prone, but we do have a great medical staff. We do have a lot of things that can help him out in that category. And he also didn't miss much time, like he said. So I don't think it's much of a problem, but yeah, he probably is injury prone.
Yeah, it definitely has been a lot more of like that. The length of injury was the pectoral alone, was it not, Doc? And then really weeks here or there with the hamstring throughout the last 4 years. It's just like 1 or 2 weeks off at most.
Correct. Yeah, he didn't miss a lot of time for it. So honestly, from my perspective, that's going to tell me, okay, this isn't a high hamstring injury. The high hamstrings is up in the tendons, and those ones suck. When it's in the meat of the muscle, those heal. They got good blood supply. Those can heal up. But once you ever get caught with like the one that's up in the cleft of your butt cheek, I mean, those can be very. Back in the day, those used to end pitchers' careers in the NFL. Healthcare has come a long way. We can work with it, but those are the ones that really that's a big red flag. So I would assume Sean Jackson's dealing with that. But but the moral of the story is you see these soft tissue things going around the body. It's jumped from the left to the right hamstring, then to the pec. And you kind of see the writing on the wall that he might be more susceptible to soft tissue stuff. And just
that's fair.
Because of his importance to the team, that's kind of why I put him on the top of the hierarchy there.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. It's tough to argue that there's anyone else you're like more concerned about going into 2021 when it comes to their injuries in 2020. But yeah, so I'll let you move on to the person you're next most concerned about, and you labeled him your underboss.
Yeah, so Cody Ford. All right, so let's take it back to his rookie year. So this guy must have had bad shoulders coming into the league because he played his rookie year. He had the harness on. He also had that elbow sprain. You guys remember when he played with like the big brace, right? So he went to that. He went after his rookie offseason. He went in and he had his shoulder done. So someone who plays with a shoulder injury with a harness usually needs stability, and it's usually due to a labrum. So he probably had like a labral stabilization injury. He probably dislocated his shoulder in college, and it was kind of giving out on him. The labrum was getting chewed up. You could put a brace on it, get through the season, and then fix it in the off season. Those surgeries do really good, by the way. So then you get into his sophomore season, and now he's got a shoulder brace on the other shoulder, right? I'm thinking, okay, he needs both of his. When people have certain postures and bone setups, right, and they're more susceptible for these kinds of injuries. So usually you see a guy who's like unstable on one side, he's probably unstable on the other. So that's like a common theme that we see it in the field. So now let's take it to midseason. So he had the MCL sprain. Okay, so MCLs, if there's one ligament in your knee you want to sprain, is the MCL because it has good blood supply compared to the other the other three. And then he got back, but then he sprained his ankle, and I don't really know what the ankle sprain is. Every week I would like kind of break down the injuries, but you couldn't really see what they had. He kind of got folded up on. I would assume it was like a mild like medial ankle sprain or whatnot. Doesn't matter. He's ready to come back the next week, and then in practice he tears his meniscus. So this is good for me to go through because he had a different meniscal injury than, as you remember, from EJ Manuel his rookie year. All right, so here's the deal. So when you tear your meniscus, when you look at your knee, it's basically like the meniscus is like if you put a CD straight into your knee. It's the cushion between your femur, that's your thigh bone, and your shin bone, your tibia. Mm-hmm. So he had a rip in it. So when you do a repair, they basically stitch that back together. Now, it's better for the longevity of a player's career because they didn't have to cut it out. But it's a longer recovery. You basically got to be in a brace for a month, and then you got to rehab for like 3 months easy. Usually, guys come back to full return to sport in 8 months. It's almost like an ACL, but just a little easier. Yes, it's a long recovery. They do if it holds, they do good, but a lot of times they do fail. So just keep that in the back of your mind. It's not like a slam dunk. When you tear your meniscus and you do a meniscectomy, they basically come in with scissors and just shave that area out. Now, once it gets out, the bad tissue, you feel great. And you can really go back and do a lot of stuff at 2 weeks post-op. That's why EJ Manuel was able to get it trimmed and get right back on the field for his rookie year. Just read what you said.
True.
Yeah, you're right. Yes. So they can, yeah, you're right. Because a lot of times these guys get surgeries when they could do a really good fix, but they just kind of like, hey, just give me the quick thing so I could get back out there. And then they pay for it later in their life, 100%. So anyways, Cody's got the meniscal repair. So he roughly needs about 8 months to get back. And he should be at about 9 months, I believe. 8-9 months come August. I think I put in the article. I had the math done, but I actually can't remember. All you need to know is he's ready to come back from the repair. He's not coming back early. He also had shoulder surgery, so he got his other shoulder repaired. So going back to this, he should have good shoulders now. I'm actually more worried about the knee injury. Okay, yeah. The meniscal repair can fail, but otherwise he should be pretty bandaged up, ready to go. But when you got a guy, first 2 years in his career, having all these surgeries and injuries, I figured I'd put him at underboss.
Yeah.
Now, why isn't he the boss? Well, because I just feel like he's a little more replacement level for his position as an inside guard. I just feel like
that's fair.
We can, we're not we're hoping he's going to work, and we put the investment into him. But if he doesn't, you could tell the team signed a lot of guards, and they're ready to the next man up him. Mm-hmm.
So that actually segues perfectly into the question I want to ask you guys, because really the injuries and obviously the lack of finding him a true home positionally. We saw him start at right tackle and then go to right guard and then found hopefully a home at left guard. But obviously the injuries derailed his season last year. And like you just said, it's a laundry list of injuries that he's overcoming this offseason. So really, how badly do you guys want to see a full season from Cody Ford? Because I think it's damn near time to make his final assessment. I know it's only year 3 and he still has another year beyond this one for his rookie contract, but I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to make my final assessment like after this year. So I'd like to get a full season out of him. What do you think that we can get from him this year, Alec, especially with the injuries and that laundry list of injuries that he has? Do you think that he's going to be the starter and that we can actually see maybe what we expected to see from him coming out of Oklahoma?
I just have a question for Doc real fast. Do you know which leg he got the surgery on?
No. I'd have to look. I mean, he's got if you go back to OTAs, he's got a wrap on his knee. I think it's left, but
okay. So going off of his left, so that is his plant foot inside. I'd prefer to have it on his kick leg, considering he's playing inside. So the plant leg is you're power stepping in. So that does a lot of damage on the knees. So that's definitely a concern if it is really his left leg. But other than that, I would love to see a full season from him. I believe this is, just like you said, Kendall, the season where we need to see the most out of him. And I believe this will be the season where we do see the most out of him. With him getting everything fixed, knock on wood that everything went well and everything is actually fixed, I think this will be the year we decide whether Cody Ford is our franchise left guard.
Yeah. Iestyn, I need to ask you, because obviously we haven't had you on. I need to know your opinions on Cody Ford, because obviously it's pretty divisive. I mean, because no one really knows what the hell's going on.
So, not to diminish the importance of his position, But it's at a point where we have enough money invested in players who we know are going to succeed in this offense in particular, and especially in this offensive line. We know Darrell Williams and Dion Dawkins are absolute roster locks to start at each tackle position. We drafted some good young talent to come up from underneath. And in a year or two that may change. But for now, these guys are consistent, great players, getting paid great money at a rare position in the NFL. Tackles are unbelievably important, especially in a passing offense like ours.
Yeah.
Guards are a lot more replaceable. And we've put a lot of money into guards. Cody Ford is still on a very, very friendly rookie contract. And if they feel like he's coming, like you said, he's not being rushed back from his injury. If they feel like he's in a position where he could play a full season, I could fully see them making some moves on the roster to give him the guarantee that he has the position. Because his success is a little more interchangeable than a lot of other people on this roster. And if he doesn't succeed, it's extremely easy to find another free agent guard on the market who will play at an acceptable level and do what you ask of him and no more.
Right.
I like Cody Ford. I think that he's been massively hampered by the fact he hasn't been able to play his true position, and been able to play his true position with reasonable talent around him.
Yeah.
The offensive line is as much about them being a cohesive unit as it is about individual talent.
Absolutely.
And he's been shackled to some unfortunate and constantly changing offensive linemen on either side of him everywhere he's played.
Yeah.
So I'd like to believe that he has exactly what it takes. I mean, there's a reason he was drafted as highly as he was. He's perfectly good at his position. And if the team feels that his injuries and his injury history isn't going to be that significant of an issue, I wouldn't be surprised to see him get the starting gig.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. So, Doc, we'll move on to your next one. But before I ask you what your next one is, I have a question for you. And maybe Chris S. has a question for you. He says, I would have thought Mitch Morse with the concussions. And I think he actually brought this up when we were talking about Matt Milano. So I'm kind of curious if you even had this as a considerable player in this hierarchy of the Bills Mafia injury list.
To
did
be
you
honest,
consider it?
I love this feedback. No, I totally forgot. This is, that is a concern. Now that's something I was kind of looking at things that happened last year, but he did have the concussion last year, correct?
Yeah.
That when he was out and then he was active and he wasn't playing. I apologize. Totally dropped the ball in there, but definitely is a concern. But he's been carrying that kind of since Kansas City. So I kind of thought it was like kind of a history thing, but no, he definitely had another concussion and it was a big deal. We talked about it mid-season. So yes, you know what, if I could redo this, maybe I would take Cody down to the captain and kind of slide Mitch Morse up there. The deal with the concussions is you definitely can get them easier if you have repetitive ones, right? If you had the big ones that knock you out, it's a little easier to knock you out again, and then you need more time to recover. And when Mitch Morse got that concussion, there was a lot of talk because his previous concussion, which was in camp, when we first got him,
literally right when we signed him,
he basically sat out for 5 weeks with it.
Yep.
And then when I looked back, he actually missed 5 weeks with KC when he had his last concussion. So he was taking a lot of time. So then when he got his concussion last year, I was like, shit, I think Mitch Morse is going to be out for like a month. And then when people were talking, he might retire. And then there was that whole weird thing where he came back and he was active, but they didn't play him. And then, maybe it was the run game thing, remember? Because he's not
right. It was a whole thing, yeah.
Who knows? The team might have just been like, you know what, let's activate him. And if we really need to put him in, we'll put him in when someone gets hurt. But we'd be more comfortable giving another week to rest his brain. Because I think the bye week was right after it, I believe.
Yeah, it was somewhere. It was right around the injury for sure.
Yeah, they were going to get like 3 weeks if he didn't play.
Yeah.
So 3 weeks basically healing time. So yeah, Chris, great point. Wish if you want my cell phone number, we should talk to him.
It's funny because Chris just
Give
hopped
me
into the chat
what?
again, and he's contributing tonight. He says, just watch the film where he, as in Cody Ford, hurt his knee and he grabbed his right knee when he went down, but no one actually says it's his right knee. I'm assuming he's talking about like articles online and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
there's your answer, Alec. It's his right knee, supposedly. I'm going to trust Chris because he
didn't hurt his. No, that was that was the game he hurt. I'm pretty sure he hurt his ankle, right? Are we talking about the MCL or are we talking about when he got knocked
I'm assuming
out?
we're talking about
the initial
meniscus.
Yeah,
the
MCL
meniscus
happened in
repair.
practice, I believe.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
honestly, guys,
in November.
go, it'd be a nice thing if someone goes onto Instagram and go through the Bills OTA pictures. You could see Cody with a knee sleeve on his knee.
And we'll know which one it is from that. But yeah, that's definitely. I'm glad I asked you, Alec, about it because I know obviously you have your offensive line playing history, so I knew you would have like more of a nuanced answer as to how you feel about Cody Ford moving forward, especially coming off of injury. So I'm glad you asked which leg, and now I'm curious which one it is because it's definitely going to affect him moving forward depending on which one it is. So Doc, we'll move on to your last one, and then obviously you can talk about the honorable mentions that are below this one. But who is your captain?
Zack Moss, right? So don't forget, he got put on IR late in the year. He had a nasty high ankle sprain, reported that he also had a fracture, and he had to get surgery. So what's the surgery? Well, when people get the high ankle sprain, who was I talking about when I did the chicken wing analogy?
I think it was us. Was
it
us.
Zack Moss too?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think we were talking about Zack Moss a couple of weeks ago about this.
Let's go full circle.
Yeah, for sure.
So like the shin bone is the tibia, and then you got a fibula next to it, right? Kind of connect these two because they connect down at the ankle like a flat chicken wing. And then when you get a high ankle sprain, it spreads out the bottom. You know, sometimes you get a little fracture on the side of your fibula. Fibula's not a big deal when you fracture it. Tibia is. But this like kind of gaps open, so they come in with a screw and a wire, and they goes right through. You get a button on this side, and then they tighten that back up. It's called a tight rope surgery, and the recovery time for that is about 3 to 5 months. Right now, Tua Tagliabue came back in 4 weeks to play in that championship game.
Right. So
technically, you can come back, but the smart thing to do is fully rehab it. So 3 to 5 months, and he's going to be at like 7+ by the time we hit camp here. So he should not be limited. So I just felt like, because it looked like he was kind of taking over the run game before he got hurt there. And I think that was a big deal to kind of speak on. But I have no concern that it's going to limit him into next year. And pretty sure he was pretty live in camp. They were just probably putting a little snap count on him.
And this, I think you guys know by now that I'm a Zack Moss stan, and for literally no other reason than I just wanted him in the draft, and then the Bills actually got him, so I'm forever going to stan him. And it's not even like I dislike Singletary, really, but it's me just kind of being narrow-minded in that way. But I'm curious to see what you guys think, because, Doc, you talked about how it seemed like he was starting to get the majority of the snaps and even the rushing attempts at the latter half of last year, and especially in that Colts game. He was really putting in good work up until the injury. So I want to know what you guys think. And Iestyn, I'll start with you. Do you think this late injury is going to withhold him from entering the season at running back 1? Or do you just think that it's Devin Singletary's job to lose regardless of the injury?
I kind of love this question and I kind of hate this question because I am philosophically opposed to having an RB1. I think that the concept of, if you have that every down running back who's the greatest in the league, we're the best on your team at doing every job. He's the best blocking back you have. He's the best at, running routes out of the backfield. He's the he's the best, power runner. He's the best, shifty back who can, make men miss. If you've got a man who can do all that, put him in for every snap of the game. Hell, put him on defense. I don't care. But we don't have anyone on our team like that. And I think that if by starting week 1, you mean him being the first guy out in the field for the first snap of the season, I think it's going to be Singletary, because Singletary can catch, and we threw a lot on first down.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason I would say that Singletary's out there starting over him, because Zack Moss was more productive as a whole during his late season. Obviously, Singletary had the occasional big burst. But Moss was the better running back in pure running situations, because the run blocking scheme helped much more his style of play. You know, they could punch a hole and he could break the tackle on the extra man and get through. Singletary didn't have that in a small space.
Yeah.
I think that Moss is the better pure running back, but I think that Singletary offers far more to the passing offense we have. He's decent. He sheds blocks. He doesn't shed them too fast when he's in a pass blocking scheme, and for that reason, I would have him as RB1. But Moss is by far the more productive. He will be the more productive running back in pure running situations, but we just don't have very many of those. It's not as highly valued in our roster.
I actually think people sleep on Zack Moss's ability to catch out of the backfield. He didn't do it a whole lot last year, but like the times that he was asked to run routes out of the backfield, they weren't the cleanest or anything like that, but he had a really good awareness for like how Josh likes to improvise and just kind of like do his own thing. And then Moss would just kind of like leak out and find the hole in the zone. And he made some timely catches, and there was like that one screen pass, I think it was against the Seahawks, where he got like 30 yards or something like that. But I actually think people sleep on that just a tad. And obviously we know the concerns with Singletary dropping passes out of the backfield. But yeah, no, I think it's pretty even split regardless. But I want to know what you guys think about this, RB1, RB2 nonsense, because obviously it is committee, but it's more just, me checking in with your preferences. So Alec, I'll move on to you. Same question. Do you think Moss is going to start right away? Do you think it has to do with the injury, or do you think it's Singletary's job to lose regardless of the whole injury thing?
Well, I think it's Singletary's job to lose, but I don't think it's because of the injury. I think it's just because of the rookie year that Singletary had. He had a down year too. So I believe you still have to give him the shot to prove himself and let him show you that he can still do it, what he did in his rookie season. But it is definitely his job to lose. But yeah, it's definitely running back by committee still. But my quote-unquote running back 1 is going to be Singletary week 1.
Yeah, it's absolutely fair. 100%. Doc, we'll definitely round it out with you because you have the injury background with this whole thing. And I know you got a bone to pick with Singletary not showing his thighs because he's just, building his upper body and he's just losing his center of gravity. So I'm curious what you think about this.
I think the team definitely wants to go with the committee. It just matters who kind of like takes it by the balls, basically, who's going to, kind of lead the charge. But now Devin looks good. You know what I mean? I definitely would love to see his thighs in that famous picture he took because, I don't know what's underneath those shorts, but his upper body definitely looked a lot more developed and chiseled. So you could make the guesstimate that he's dropped some body fat and might be quicker out there. Do I think he's picked up like 0.3 of a second out of 40? I don't buy that. I think that was kind of pumped up from his trainer to try to get some attention, but
it's just being a good trainer at that point.
But we should see him. I would expect to see him a little quicker, and he's always been shifty, so it should help with kind of his excel. The big thing is like he could shift. He does those jump cuts. He goes,
but getting out of those jump cuts.
Yeah, you just got to go now. You got to go, and
I'm
he doesn't
definitely
have the burst. It's 5 yards instead of 15.
Right.
And sometimes kind of break one to the house. So I don't know. I like the committee, but you look at those two guys and it doesn't scream home run threat. Give someone a long-term contract kind of deal. So, but we'll see what happens. You know what I mean?
That's exactly why I wanted to draft Moss, because I didn't think either of them were home run threats, but I just felt like their running styles were so perfect. Like I just think back to, I think it was the Tennessee Titans with Chris Johnson, and I'm blanking on the other name if anyone can help me out, but they called it Thunder and Lightning, and one's a power back, one's the speedy, more elusive back. Obviously, Singletary isn't necessarily the speedy back, but he's obviously the elusive back who's going to make people miss more, like a la LaShawn McCoy. I'm not saying Zack Moss can't, but Zack Moss's running style is more, the Freddie Jackson, where it's just kind of like get every yard you can, fall forward, and be tough. while you have the ball in your hands. So I really just think they complement each other so well. And, both third-round draft picks, there's not much of a cost to keeping both of them through the duration of their rookie contracts. And then just, when Singletary's up, we'll see if he becomes a star. Like, yeah, maybe they'll be able to get an extension with him at a nice, solid rate that's fair for him and the team. And if not, then go ahead and just draft another third, fourth round running back and do the same with Moss for that one more year. And then, just keep re-upping in that way. Philosophically, I think that just makes sense from a team building perspective, especially when you're paying guys like Josh Allen the way we expect that we have to pay Josh Allen moving forward. So, yeah, that's the running back position. Obviously, we kind of went full circle from Antonio Williams at the start to Zack Moss at the end. I want to ask you guys about the news that came out today, though, about Chandler Jones, believe Rochester native, so Western New York native, played his collegiate football at Syracuse, and obviously is one of the better pass rushers of the past, decade-ish or so. He's really been quite good, but the news that came out is that he's trying to get a trade from the Arizona Cardinals. And is this just Bills Mafia doing it again? Like they just want the guy who's free and available, or like, is there any sort of smoke to this? Like there's a chance in hell that we can make any sort of deal work. Alec, I see you saying no chance in hell.
No chance in hell. There's no way that we're going to be able to do that. We don't have the money for it. Even if we don't have the trade pieces. We don't want to trade draft picks. Mm-hmm. I don't see us giving up a draft pick for something we just spent a first and a second round pick on.
Right.
So I don't see a chance that it happens.
Anyone dare dispute or rebut what Alec had to say? Because honestly, I agree with you, Alec.
I think he's probably right here. I mean, I'm opposed to getting Jones on board for the same reason I was opposed to getting Watt on board. And
right.
That may be controversial, but we don't need yet more aging, expensive veterans at a position where we were. I think we had the most money invested in the defensive line last year, and we had the bottom 10 defensive line last year. Yep. There's a reason why we spent our first 2 draft picks on, exterior defensive linemen who can get to the quarterback. It's because we didn't have that much on the roster already. And in order to try and build a dynasty, a team that's going to continue to win for the next 10, 15, 20 years instead of just 2 or 3, like you see all the time in the NFL, in order to make this success have some longevity, you need to inject youth and rookie contracts into expensive positions of value and make them work. And we haven't done that a great deal with our defensive line. Some guys have worked out. Ed Oliver is proven to be an incredible physical player, but he hasn't had the massive impact on the team we want yet. I do believe in him. But we've seen a lot of misses on the interior and exterior defensive line. JA17, I'm a big fan of, and I believe he can succeed as well, but he hasn't shown it yet. He's had flashes, he's improved over time, which is what we do with a lot of our raw prospects, which is also a consistent draft strategy of McDermott and Bean, which I can go into, but I'm not going to because we don't think we have enough time. But we don't need yet another expensive aging veteran at a position of value when we just spent a bunch of draft capital and money on fixing that position. We have enough depth as it is. We already have bubble guys who last year would have been roster locks and this year may not even make the cut before, they may not even, if they do make the cut, they might not even be getting regular season snaps. We have too much invested already, and there's no reason to invest it further for what may be a marginal upgrade over one of the lower or one of the mid-tier guys on our roster. We freed up a lot of money, and we have other positions of need that could be addressed with that money, like CB2, or maybe a little more tight end depth. We have options, and I don't really consider adding yet another pricey player to be one of them.
Yeah, it's actually funny you say that, especially CB2, because obviously the news that came out about Richard Sherman a couple of weeks ago, and then I'm pretty sure earlier today, Steven Nelson just signed with the Eagles. So a couple of CB2s pretty much off the market at that point. So Doc, I'll full circle. Would you even want to see any sort of kicking of the tires towards Chandler Jones, or are you more specifically you're set with this roster, or it's just kind of like, okay, maybe a veteran here or there on a cheap contract?
Yeah, no, the Chandler thing got got the smoke because he's a Rochester kid.
Yeah.
And actually, their family moved to Binghamton.
Oh,
I
really?
was living in Binghamton in high school. To be honest, I went to Union Endicott to do a little training so I played a little college football, not at a big school, just like a D3 level. But I was doing like my summer workouts at Union Endicott because they had a nice field. And the Jones' third brother, who's the D tackle who played for the Colts and stuff, he comes out of the school. The kid just wanted to work. He's like, hey, like, you doing like football exercises? I'm like, yeah. He's like, cool. Can I run with you? I'm like, sure. So it just looked like he was like around the school, just like wanted to work out no matter who it was with or what he was doing. But anyways, yeah. But they're from Rochester originally. And I think that's kind of what started the thing. Plus it's a DN and we need DN. But we would have to like trade out. Yeah. We would have to get guys out to get him in. It's never going to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But it'd be cool. But, don't forget, like, Chandler had that, like, that crazy thing in New England right before he left.
Yeah.
Don't
I think you're right. Yeah.
Bruce Cannon and his brother,
I think his brother isn't too far off from that either, yeah.
No.
So, I mean, there have been things in the past that happened with, like, Vernon Butler, and that kind of gets swept under the rug because he's, a McDermott pick and a Bean pick back in Carolina. Sometimes there's some form of just networking to this, and that's why guys get brought on the team. But I agree with you guys. I think this is it's all smoke. It's all just kind of like we're waiting and we're eager for training camp. Spice. And anytime someone becomes available, we're just like, can we make this work? Is it possible? Let's do it. And it's never really, there's never a reason to do it. It's just getting overzealous and overzealous with the money, really. That's the bottom line of it. So that's all we got planned for tonight, but I wanted to ask you guys and open up the floor. If there's anything you guys want to talk about, we're more than free to do it. Maybe even a few questions here or there if anyone's got any questions in the comments section. But that's all we got planned for tonight. So any of you three got anything you guys want to talk about specifically before we hop off?
Well, you did the Spencer Brown thing last night, right?
I did.
Yeah, how was that? He looks good, but how do you think that? Just give me your overall assessment. I was out last night, so I didn't get to watch it yet. But he looks like he dominates that level. Do you think this is something that's going to translate?
The thing is, like, I don't even know if he dominated that level. There were plays, there were stretches where he was dominant, but the consistency isn't there. It's kind of similar to like a Josh Allen of offensive tackles. It's like this dude has every trait in the world to succeed. And you could see it on spot plays here or there. He flashed for sure. But, he just needs some refinement to his game. And I was obviously watching tape from 2019. He spent 2020 with Joe Staley. So I'm sure he learned some things from a wily vet like that. And then he did prove to be a little bit like more refined, I guess, at the Senior Bowl. But he was definitely rusty at the Senior Bowl. So I'm like very mixed on Spencer Brown. But what I will say, like, final word is I am excited. And the main reason I'm excited is because he's not going to be thrust into a starting role immediately. Mm-hmm. It was a luxury pick in the third round for a team that has two bookend starting offensive tackles with Deion Dawkins and Darrell Williams. So I'm like really thrilled to see that he's going to just be able to learn and be a sponge for, up until, knock on wood, no one gets injured, but up until an injury. That's really what it's going to take for him to get on the field. Not because he's not good enough, but because, he just has some stuff to learn. Like, it's going to be a lot to move up to this next level. The three things, I'll say three things specifically he's got to work on. Someone put it in the chat yesterday. It might have been you, Chris S. Chime in if it was you. It was, he doesn't play to the whistle all the time. Sometimes he's just like, oh, okay, the play's done. I did my job. Play's over. And sometimes it bites him in the ass because he doesn't play through the whistle. He gets beat to the inside a little bit too often. And the third one is escaping me. I don't know. He's got to trust his athleticism, though. he doesn't get beat around his outside shoulder because he's just so damn athletic. And because of that, like, he could just play people like, you got to beat me to the outside and just kind of keep his positioning on the inside. But all in all, I'm really excited for Spencer Brown. It's just like, I'm really excited. Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's honestly these two. Chris says momentum. Like if a defensive end is like going upfield, he's got to like use that defensive momentum to his advantage and push the guy further upfield. And then Dawn also comes in and says his pads, he's 6'9". He's got to learn how to play at 6'5". Like, that's just bottom line. He's going to have to learn how to do that and build some muscle memory to consistently do that. Just like not even thinking about it, just subconsciously play a bit lower so it's easier for him to get leverage. But yeah, that's my long-winded response.
Very, very interesting prospect, right? Because his physical skills were like through the roof, but he had quite the injury history. And I tell you, go back to the 2021 article I put out in the draft class, because he had like a femur fracture, he had the meniscal repair, and he had like another big one. And I don't know, I just worried about that knee on him. But
I mean, another reason I'm okay with him being like not thrust into his starting role.
Give him more of a red shirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like he does hit that kind of that similar vein of McBean's draft practice, which is bet heavily on traits and train them up. I mean, look at what they did with Ed Oliver, what they did with Josh Allen, Tremaine Edmonds, and they were supposed to do it with Harry Phillips, Epinesa. There's so many examples of them drafting like that. It seems to be a recurring trend with them. Yes. And this is one of those times where, unlike a lot of those other scenarios, they have the guys ahead of him to give him the time he needs. Starting caliber, Pro Bowl level, or sometimes all pro caliber of guys who can pass on a lot of that information, even if they're not actively trying to do so. He can pick it up. Josh Allen didn't get the opportunity for that, and throwing him in the deep end seems to have worked in the long run, but it wasn't always considered the best idea.
Right.
Same thing could be said for Edmonds. These are all similar issues we seem to face with guys drafted from this front office's philosophy, and it seems to have worked out pretty well for the most part. So I trust that they can make this work, but they've earned that trust.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because they definitely leaned into the like drafting traitsy guys, especially this past year. Like almost their entire 2021 draft class is like traitsy dudes. But before we log off, I want to ask Alec what you think of Spencer Brown, because obviously I know you know your stuff with offensive linemen. I'm curious if you watched last night. If you didn't, no worries. But I'm curious what your base opinions are on Spencer Brown.
I like his footwork on his pass sets. I think he does a really good job setting back, and he sets straight back. There's no he's not setting back on an angle. It's a good straight set. Like you said, he needs to work on powering inside a little bit more. He does get beat inside. His pad level is all right, but he's huge, so it's going to be hard for him to play at a proper level. And his hand placement is actually relatively good for his size, like having to go down and everything. He has good hand placement as well.
That is a good point. That's not something I took note of yesterday, but that is a good point and something I'll definitely be looking at more specifically moving forward when it comes to Spencer Brown. This is a funny one. Like a puppy growing into his body. That's Spencer Brown. He's going to have to learn to play with it. All right, so that's it for us with the writers' room this Sunday. Iestyn, it was great to have you. Hopefully, we'll get you back. Obviously, we know it was a stroke of luck this time, but hopefully, we get another stroke of luck in the future.
I'll do my best to be around for sure.
Yeah, do whatever you can, but no worries. We understand people get busy. It's not exactly the most opportune time for everyone. But yeah, appreciate having you. Appreciate having you, Doc, and you, Alec, as always. But this is us from the writers' room, and I'd like to get a Go Bills from everyone, so I'll start it. Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Let's go.